from MBA Missions, coming to you via GMAT Club. So first of all, thank you to GMAT Club for having me here today. And I'm really looking forward to meeting about, I think it's 4 of you, or 5 of you. At this point, we're waiting for the last person to arrive. And just to talk through your profiles a little bit. One of the things that I'm really looking forward to is it's my understanding that all of you come from what one can say a non-traditional background. Some more, some less, but I think it's going to just be a very, very interesting process to go through. Taking a look at all of you, and from what I've seen already, you're all very, very interesting. Just to give you a sense of where I'm coming from, so I also had something of an interesting background before I went to business school. I actually was involved in politics for a number of years, and I only decided to go to business school when I was about 29 years old. So I started at MIT in 1997, 1,000 years ago at this point. I obviously graduated in 99. At that point then, I went to Bain & Company for a couple of years. I was in their private equity group, which was interesting, crazy. I was there just as the economy was melting down in the early 2000s. So it was quite a wild ride. I then went off and founded a number of my own companies, sometimes with people, sometimes by myself, and some with better success, some with worse success. And I ended up coming really just about a year ago to MBA Mission. Part of the reason is I love the client work. I really, really like getting to know people and helping them tell their story, as well as just the entire idea of seeing how people's future plays itself out. MBA Missions, as I'm sure you know, is MBA Admissions Consulting. This is not a sales presentation, so that's all I'm going to say about that. You can find a lot of information about us at mbamission.com, including a lot of free resources. One thing I will point everyone towards is we give a 30-minute free consultation to anybody who's interested in applying to business school. You may want to take advantage of that. That is 30 minutes that you can use however you'd like. And on that note, why don't we just jump right on in and let's see who our first applicant is, whom I can at least talk through their profile a little bit. So Nickel, do you want to bring into the room that first applicant? Okay, terrific then. And first of all, I want to make sure I'm getting your name right. Pinjathe, is that right? Pinjathe?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, perfect then. Yeah. So what I'm going to do, obviously I see you're in Kenya, and at this point you've worked with a number of NGOs, but with that in mind, let's take a step back here. Why don't you give me the 2 minutes on who you are and how you're thinking about business school?
So my name is Pingethe, as you can see on the screen. I've been working in the nonprofit sector for the past 3 years. So my very first job was at a public broadcasting company, and then my second job was at a nonprofit agricultural organization. And then my third job was at a transportation organization. And so bearing my background, I've decided to go to business school because I've realized that I need the technical skills that could be gained from a business education. I need to learn about accounting, finance. And what I've noticed from my previous roles is that I've always been in the background. So my view on getting business education is to be able to have a seat at the table. I want to be able to be part of the deliberations as pertains to solving problems. I'm looking to get into consulting, so I was thinking that a business education would be very valuable in getting me into a more managerial role.
Yep. Great. Perfect. And at this point, just so I understand better, are you planning on applying round 1 this year? Is that already in your sights, or is this something that you may be thinking about longer term?
Yes, so I'm planning to apply in round 1. So I was thinking of applying a couple of schools in round 1 and then another group of schools in round 2.
Okay, perfect. That makes sense then. And just how far are you along in this process? It appears you've already taken your GRE. Have you started your applications at all?
So I haven't started my applications just yet. So we can say I'm in the
Yeah.
strategy
Yeah. That's great.
process of strategizing,
Yeah.
and that's why I'm here today.
Yeah. Perfect. Perfect. Then great. Well, I'm going to start off with just some general thoughts that is probably relevant to everybody here. Fundamentally, you have to answer these three questions. Why an
Mm-hmm.
MBA? Why now? And why at a particular school? So I think for many of people who have non-traditional backgrounds, why an MBA is going to be incredibly important. Why you want to take this route rather than another route. Because just looking at your resume and getting a very general sense of you after 3 minutes here is it seems like there may be some other routes for you to get into your central bank or for the IMF. I don't know that for sure, but as an admissions committee member, that's what I'd be thinking about. So from your perspective, and you already started doing it, is okay, let's think very deeply about the skills you need to learn and how that will get you to that first job. So you have to really define a couple of things here. First of all, the skills that move beyond what I would say your basic business school curriculum. And honestly, I look at you and you tell me you want to learn accounting. Well, I have to tell you, I'm not particularly concerned about your learning accounting. You're a smart person. You can go online to YouTube. You can go to Khan Academy to learn accounting. I think one of the things you have to really think about is in terms of, okay, beyond basic business fundamentals, what else do I need to learn in that school? And frequently those are things around people management. And in your case, probably some strategy as well. So people management would be, okay, if I want to, and business schools love building leaders, if I want to be head of your country's central bank in 10 years, what skills will you need? Well, the first thing we're going to know is you won't need any PowerPoint skills. You won't need any Excel spreadsheet skills. You simply will move beyond that. So think about that career 5 or 10 years from now. What will that need to look like? You'll certainly need some managerial skills, some leadership skills, some organizational behavior skills, some strategy skills, as well as skills around entering a particular foreign market or really just getting a better sense of international business. So with that in mind, as you do research into your school, look for those things that go beyond the website, I like to tell folks, in terms of, okay, what does this school teach? How does it teach leadership? Because that is something that can really vary from school to school. So Vanderbilt, Cambridge, Oxford, London Business School, yes, they all teach accounting basically the same way. But do they teach leadership the same way? Do they interact with the rest of the world the same way? And I think for you to really do some strong research now into figuring out, okay, UCLA does something this way. For example, they allow for a capstone project your last year at UCLA. Do you have a sense of what that may look like? Similarly, London Business School has opportunities for internships. Do you know where you'll intern? And again, the different quirks, differences, idiosyncrasies of each school, it's going to be really important that you know and that you can speak to that and really include it in your application. So let me pause there. I am from Boston, so I can always guarantee you I'm going to speak too fast and too long. So with that in mind, does that make sense to you? And I'm sure that must also breed some other questions.
Yes, I think it makes a lot of sense. Um, to your point on not needing to go to business school to learn accounting, um, could you please clarify why you don't think that would be a
Sure.
good idea?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I think you will learn accounting at business school. So as soon as you go to business school, there's some very fundamental things you'll learn. You'll learn accounting, you'll learn finance, you'll at least touch on strategy. That doesn't change from school to school. And when I say business schools aren't too worried about you learning that, what I really mean is they want to see your motivation for learning everything else at business school. And I say that you
Right.
can, because any business school is going to teach you accounting. And even in the extreme, this is only partly true, but to talk exaggerate in this way, you can learn accounting yourself on YouTube. And I think, again, that's partially true. But my point more is this idea here of, okay, what do you want to learn at business school that is right for you, that is different for you, and maybe is the thing that this business school teaches very well. So for example, just to throw it out there, so Cambridge is doing a wonderful job in terms of entrepreneurship. UCLA is doing a wonderful job in terms of giving you a senior project or a second-year project where you really engage with a lot of different companies, or you have the opportunity to engage with a lot of different companies. So from the perspective of crafting a narrative for yourself, Cambridge, you maybe tip it, again, starting with the same narrative, but maybe you tip it towards the need to bring to these organizations something more entrepreneurial, just a different way that the IMF or your central bank should approach different things, and that would be absolutely right for the Cambridge application. For a place like Vanderbilt, less so. For a place like UCLA, maybe the conversation is around this idea during your senior year. I say senior year. What I really mean is your last year, your second year of business school. What you did is maybe did a project for the Federal Reserve in Los Angeles. And again, the Federal Reserve of the United States has about a dozen of them floating around. There's the Boston Federal Reserve that, again, is very, very much focused on just fiscal policy or monetary policy for the U.S. So that is a different narrative that you're creating for yourself as far as what you want to learn in business school. And it's probably going to take just a little bit of effort to see how London Business School, sort of how they see themselves, or how Vanderbilt sees itself. And for example, a good way of thinking about this is, and I was going to get to this, is, okay, who are the people who have your job 5 or 10 years from now? And the way of identifying them is you may know them, or you may start haunting LinkedIn for folks, or you may actually just look at the places where folks are getting jobs that you want, and understanding better what their careers have looked like, and in some ways modeling your own career after that. And then you're able to, in some ways, reverse engineer. If I want to do this in the first, second, and third job, what do I have to learn in business school today? And again, most likely what you have to learn in business school today is not accounting and finance. It is things that are far broader than that, and again, very idiosyncratic to the school in terms of how they teach some of these things. So let me pause again. It can be confusing at times, so let me make sure that you're understanding me.
Yes, I think it makes a lot of sense. I was looking at who is heading the central bank in Kenya, and he went to Yale. So from what I understand as well is that I'm in the process of selecting the schools that I want to get a business education from. I should look at what they offer, if they offer what I'm looking for, and my career path. So let's say if I were to revise my list as it is right now and probably add Yale or Harvard Business School, what would be your opinion on those choices?
No, again, I think all of them are great choices. Let me throw in another school for you, NYU. Very finance focused in New York City. They may not say it so directly, but New York City thinks it's the center of the world. So similarly, Columbia, and so each of them have their own little differences, and it's really those differences that will make your application sing, if you will. And what I mean by that is business schools, particularly for quirky people, in many ways they have to be convinced that you're serious about business school. And one way that you show them that you're serious about business school is you know exactly what you want to study at that business school, because you know what you're going to do with it. So each business school has those things that they want you to study. So for example, Yale is the School of Management. Historically, it has done a great job in terms of helping people get into public administration, public sector, nonprofits. So if you talk about going to Yale, you'd want to really highlight your own NGO work, as well as this idea here of going into public administration, maybe in a central bank, maybe in another NGO. And that's the story for Yale. For NYU, it's a different story. For NYU, it's a story really focused on finance. For Columbia, it's a story about being at the center of New York City. And really from the perspective, okay, Columbia offers you 1 day a week to do an internship. Okay, what are you going to do that 1 day a week during doing an internship? Where are you going to be? And though we've sort of bucketed together NYU, Columbia, and Yale, how you approach it, given your background, is going to be how you approach each school, given your background, is going to be very, very important in terms of, okay, here's what I want to do. Each of the business schools can take me there, but in a slightly different path. So you
Right.
want to be clear as far as how that different path is. And again, specificity is really credibility here. So if you explain why Yale versus why NYU, then that's going to be, I think, very positive for your application. Okay.
So I should be clear about my why and my
Yep.
what.
That's
So in my essays, how else can I make myself stand out to my target schools?
sure, absolutely. I am going to hold that question for now because unfortunately, you and I are out of time. But I will
Okay.
absolutely answer that question with one of the most likely with one of the other folks here, and if not, certainly by the end of this conversation.
All right. Thank you so much,
Of
Harold. I really
course,
appreciate your
of
insight.
course, of course. No, good luck. Okay. It looks like we have up next Rexar, maybe.
Hi,
Hi, Rexar. How are you?
I am doing well. My name is Shivam actually.
Okay, that I suspected you had a different name, but well, in any case, why don't you take another minute or two and just help me understand how are you thinking about your candidacy and how are you thinking about business school?
Sure. So I'll just talk a bit about myself. I'm a graduate from IIT Bombay. I have a very low GPA from there. It was around 6.5 out of 10.
Okay,
My GMAT score is 730
okay,
with a Q50 V40. My work experience on and off is around 6 years, which
okay,
includes a lot of breaks actually.
okay,
For 1 year, I traded in the Brazilian interest rate,
mhm.
and
Nice,
after that, I took a break of around a year and a half when I went to travel across a bunch of different countries.
great, interesting,
And that was mostly because I didn't want to be in trading or finance anymore, and I wanted to shift basically. So needed some time to think about uh, my life goals, etc. So I went on this journey, and after that, I realized that I think being in startups and like having a more direct impact on people would be something that excites me. And based on that, I joined a couple of startups for the next 3.5 years.
great,
I was in the strategy team in CEO's offices where I got a chance to lead a lot of projects and a lot of different teams. Uh, and yeah, that's about it. The reason I'm doing an MBA is because right now I'm in a place where I'm sort of being stereotyped as a real estate professional,
okay,
which I don't want to be, and it's reflecting in a lot of different companies that I wanted to apply to for the next job.
okay,
And so I think this is the right time to get out of the stereotype and go for an MBA from where I can actually have a much better view of where what my next step should be.
sure, sure, great, then, great. Well, let me speak to, and I hate to put it to you this way, let me speak to a couple of the weaknesses in your application and what you can
Sure,
do about it. So,
sure,
and first of all, it's just a lower GPA,
right.
which, yes, it matters, but the
Mhm,
farther you away you are from undergraduate, it matters less. So I think
mhm,
given that you're 28 and you can basically look back through an optional essay that for whatever reason your GPA was low, whether you weren't taking school seriously, you do other commitments, you just have to address it. I don't
mhm,
think it necessarily is fatal. And what I always tell my applicants writing when it's working for me is business schools will blink once, but they won't blink twice. And what that really means is if there's a deficit, a weak point in your application, that's fine. Everyone has one. As soon as you're
mhm,
starting to get to 2 weak points, gets a little bit harder, and 3 weak points even harder than that. So, from what I'm seeing here, one way of mitigating the fact that you had a low GPA is really getting a very strong GMAT score. And again, a 650 on the quant side, excuse me, a 50 on the quant side is great. While 730 is probably a little bit under average for your demographic, the
mhm,
Q of 50 is great. One other thing you can use to mitigate your low GPA would possibly, would take a little bit more thinking here, but possibly look at taking some sort of online course or online certificate program in order to be able to say, yes, now that I'm more serious about school, look, I got an A in. There's some great courses in terms of on the Coursera. There's some great courses that Wharton provides. HBS has a number of online courses. The ultimate is called HBX Core, which is something like 4 courses. It takes a while. It's expensive. But if you are looking for anything and everything you can do, then that's one extreme. Sort of on the other side of things, there's something called MBA Math, which again is something that's 20 hours of work, and you get a transcript for it. So I would look to maybe take an online course or something like MBA Math with this idea here of, okay, let's attack the GPA first. The next thing that you have to really attack, if you will, is what I'm going to call fuzziness in those first few jobs after undergraduate. And what do we mean by fuzziness here is, at the end of the day, business schools love to look at someone who has a very linear trajectory. You did A, you did B, you did C, you go to business school, you do D, E, and F. So what you really need to do is, to the degree you can, recognizing it may be hard, is first of all, get rid of some of that fuzziness in what happens between business school, what has happened to you before business school or after undergraduate. So if you can push any linearity there, if you can make sort of tape things together, attach things, glue things together to the degree that you can, that would be great. And what I mean by that, and again, extreme example, while you were backpacking in country X, you saw that they had a need for an item. You then went back to India and you started a startup that basically addresses that need. Listen, I think that it would be perfect to explain or add some linearity, some deliberate element to what you did beforehand to the degree you can. But I think it's going to be important, again, through an optional essay, to explain how things evolved over time in terms of your choices, both in career choices as well as choices you made, personal choices. And again, 2 years of backpacking is not fatal by any means, but it does have to be explained in the greater context of why you did it in terms of the professional context. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've actually focused on the 2 issues that I felt I had with my applications, and yeah, I think I'll look for some courses
Yep.
for which I can get good transcripts and try to create a linear story.
I think that's right. I think that's absolutely right. And then I also tell folks that if there's fuzziness before business school, meaning, again, a nonlinear story, you've done a bunch of things, not bad by any means, but something that business schools will recognize, and you try to mitigate this fuzziness to the degree that you can, it is very important that post-MBA, you know exactly what you're going to do. And you're going to be able to say to them in very specific terms, here's what I'm going to do. So maybe that is, this is not the trajectory for you, but I'm going to show you what I mean. After business school, you want to go to Amazon in Seattle, learn best practices, learn product management. At that point, after 5 years, you want to go to one of their, I'll say, frontier economies, to places that Amazon is just putting their toe into now, and you want to be a country manager in that country. Over time, within the next 10 years after doing that, you want to start your own consulting firm that brings US companies or European companies into that particular frontier economy that you've already been a regional manager for. Let's say I'm going to again make up the story here. You go to Amazon, you learn about product development, you learn strategy. At that point, then you go to Vietnam, and you're the country head there, and you do that. And you bring products into Vietnam. At that point, you say, okay, I now want to build out my career, get broader, get more responsibility. Then you start your own company that works with US or European companies to bring products to Vietnam. So you can see a very nice linear path here. That is the type of path you want to create for yourself as you create your application. So I don't want to pick on you a little bit here, but I will. When somebody puts down strategy or management consulting, what that signals to business schools is that you're still trying to figure things out. At the end of the day, 40% of MBA classes go into consulting. So that is something that business schools know. At the same point, business schools see you're saying you're going to consulting. I'm still trying to figure things out. I don't know what I'm going to do. And for some folks, that's fine. But for you, not so much. Because you spent the last 8 years figuring things out. You want to go to business school and only figure out things out again. So that doesn't make sense. So just as we're wrapping up time here, and I will give you time for another couple questions, is one way of really addressing a career prior to business school that's a little bit goes off in a number of different directions is get super specific in terms of what you do after business school. And the way you get super specific is diving deep into what those first few jobs out of business school really are, what jobs do people get, and how do their careers evolve over the next 5 or 10 years. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think this was an issue that I knew I had. Haven't researched as much as to what kind of jobs do people get who have backgrounds closer to or more similar to mine. So that is something I have to work on. And that's a perfect post MBA story that you just made up about Amazon. Love it.
Right, of course. And then if you can, you link it back to maybe one of the places you traveled. And I don't know if you traveled through Vietnam, but wouldn't that be lovely?
I did actually.
You did. Perfect. So you can understand how now that becomes really a much more linear story than it would have been. You're in Vietnam, you've been in the startup world, you want to go and learn best practices at Amazon, and then you want to go to a place that you love, Vietnam, as the country director. I think that's great. Perfect then. Great. Maybe we'll do one last question and then I'll take the next candidate here.
Okay, so one more question that I had was, does the long-term post-MBA goal have to be like very specific?
As you get farther out in terms of your career, it can be less and less specific. So I think for you, long-term goal can be a little bit fuzzier, but again, one of your deficits is going to be this idea that you, quote, know what you're doing, where you're going. So I would still work pretty hard to make it as specific as possible. The reality is only about 20% of all business school students end up doing what they said they were going to do on their application. So that's 1 in 5, and business schools recognize that because it's a time of learning. It's a time of understanding who you are as a professional. So at that point, it's understandable. Only 4 out of 5 people end up doing something completely different. At the same point, in your case, you have to at least imply to them that you're 1 out of 5, that you really know where you're going, that you have your world mapped out for you. I think it will be best served with that strategy.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Awesome.
Perfect.
That
Great.
was really helpful. Thank you so much, Alan.
Oh, of course. With that in mind, why don't we move on to the next person, Ty D. Sheets. And let me see here.
Hi there.
Hey, how are you?
Good, Howard. How are you doing?
Good.
It's actually just Ty. Sorry.
That's fine. I know people are using their sometimes their screen names, or they don't want their name to be so well known.
For sure.
So, Ty, first of all, I'm excited to speak with you. One reason is I sit in North Carolina right now.
No kidding.
So Gardner Webb University, I have heard of it, but I don't know exactly where it is in North Carolina.
That's a very small school, so it's maybe an hour west of Charlotte, very rural town. But yeah, it was a liberal arts college. I kind of had a passion after high school of going into music, and I did that for several years before kind of changing my career path. And there was an excellent teacher there, so that's why I ended up there. No regrets.
Great, perfect. And yes, so talk me through what the next looks like. 6 years look like.
For sure.
Like, yeah, a lot of music, some nonprofit work, and then we'll talk a little bit about how you anticipate your career going.
Absolutely. So I kind of found myself after a year working on ships. I saw folks who had, the careers that I might want in 10 years versus how I was doing then. And I kind of had figured out that being a musician, even though I was passionate about it, it wasn't something that was really going to be a fulfilling long-term career path for me. So I kind of wanted to think through what could an opportunity look like for me that I could do mission-driven work, that I could do work that gave back to the community. I could do work that really like motivated me and felt like I was doing meaningful work in the community. So that's why I joined a program called Americorps, which that's kind of like a national service program, if you haven't heard of that. Did that for a couple of years, and I worked in an underserved school. First, just working with students every single day, just working to try to help keep them on track in their math and lead after school programs, and just try to keep the school culture positive and all that. And then I went on to join as a manager of a team doing that same work.
Oh, neat.
And what I really discovered in the last 3 years of that job is I've discovered a passion for leadership and for management, not just people management, but also project management. I've really loved learning in that space and growing and really allowing and empowering the growth of the people that I'm leading has become a real passion of mine as well. So I've thought a lot about business school, and I think now is the right time for me, just because I kind of see, the future of my career. I know I want it to be doing mission-driven work. I know I want to be connected to the work that I'm doing, but I know that I look at people who have positions that I would like to have in 5 or 10 or 15 years, and I know there's a significant gap in the skills that they have and the experiences that they have and what I have. So I'm kind of thinking of just these, I joined this organization that I'm currently working for in kind of a startup phase. So I know that education organizations, schools, nonprofits, they struggle with scaling up. They struggle with, replicating meaningfully, building systems that work from city to city to state to state to school. So I'm interested in that. I'm passionate in that. I would love to learn how to scale organizations, and I think business school would be a really great place to start with that. But I'm passionate about leading because I think that's the best way for me to expand the scope of my own impact. When I think about leadership, I really think about business school. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. In fact, you are using and thinking about business school, I think, in the right way. And as we talked about earlier, business school, you don't have to go to business school to learn accounting. And again, exaggerating here, but you do have to go to business school to learn about leadership, organizational behavior, management. So we begin by recognizing the fact, Ty, you know exactly where you're going to business school, and you know the skills that you want to get, and those happen to be skills that business schools want to teach you. So I think that's terrific. That said, they teach it, each business school teaches it in much different ways. So if you look at Harvard Business School, for example, University of Virginia, it is very much teaching you to be a CEO, very much teaching you something of a top-down leadership. And that doesn't mean that's the only way they teach leadership, but that is the lens in which they look at leadership. If you go completely across the country to Stanford, it's all about self-awareness. It's all about self-reflection. How are you as a leader? What sort of leader will you be? And then how do you build other skills? So again, very different ways of looking at leadership. And honestly, one of your jobs is, as you think about the schools you're going to apply to, and that's, you can spend all day, we could spend all day talking about a list of schools, but the reality is, as you look at all the different schools you want to apply to, see how they define leadership. Kellogg, for example, has a specific way of looking at leadership. Duke has a specific way of looking at leadership. By the way, Duke may be a very good choice for you.
Actually, I got a waiver at the MBA Spotlight last week, so shout out to GMAT Club. I'm going to apply to Duke for free.
That's great. That is absolutely great. I would even consider, and again, tie a long conversation, maybe Duke early decision. In my mind, first of all, best chance of acceptance, but also in my mind, you're sort of hitting on desiring a lot of those things that Duke offers probably better than anyone else. So again, I would certainly think about that. So for you, I think the goal would be understanding how leadership is taught at the different schools, and then tipping, and I said this earlier, then tipping your narrative towards that's the type of leadership you want to learn. So I think that's going to be very, very helpful. And I think for you also, I think you have great aspirations here. You know what you want to do, but in a general way right now. I think one good use of your time is going to be really nailing it down. Okay, what does it mean to actually be a leader in a nonprofit when I just graduated business school, from 3 years from now or 5 years from now? And there's different ways of approaching that. One way of approaching it is figuring out someone who you want to be 5 or 10 years from now, the job that they have, look on LinkedIn and figure out how they got there. And then I don't want to say you're copying their trajectory, but
Sure.
you using that as a model
Mhm.
for what your career will look like. Does that make sense?
Of course it does. I mean, I think I've done some of that work already, and kind of my thinking. I've reached out to folks who've been alumni of the service program that I've done, and who have gone on to business school, and that's definitely, like, as you said, it's not copying but incorporating or using that as a model. That's been really helpful. I do want to actually use a little bit of our time here, if you're okay with it, to talk about a couple of gaps I see in my profile right now. So I'm definitely in intensive GMAT prep. I wish I had gotten on the ball with this in February, but it didn't happen. So I'm intensely prepping for that, but it is a concern of mine, as well as I have some analytical duties in my job right now in terms of analyzing data, creating action plans around that data, but it's not robust. So I know that the quant side of the GMAT and demonstrating my ability to handle the academic rigor of a place like Duke or Yale or Ross would be important. So what kind of general advice would you have there, and then I can go from there?
Sure. And Haas should be on your list as well.
Haas is. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Perfect. Well, there's sort of two ways of approaching this. First, I would say about GMAT, higher the better. So isn't that always the case?
Yeah.
I think if you're worried about your quant side, MBA math, as I spoke earlier, is probably a good supplement to what you've done. About 20 hours of your work, and then you get a nice transcript that goes to business schools, and it shows business schools you know what your weaknesses are and you're looking to address them. So I think that's certainly a way to go here. I have to tell you, though, looking at a 720, what was your quant score? Do you remember?
That's my goal. I'm preparing right now. I'm right now at about between a 28 and a 35 is where I'm scoring.
Okay, so at the end of the day, if you're in the 720 range and you've done some things to address what may be a soft quant side of things, and again, MBA math, I don't have anything to do with MBA math. Our company, it's not our company. So this is sort of earnestly, I believe you should probably take MBA math.
Okay.
At this point, listen, I think at the end of the day, does it change your school choices or your school targets? I don't think it does. Getting a 720 or getting whatever score you do, really over a 700, because they recognize you're coming from a different place. So I don't think that's particularly something you have to worry too much about, assuming you don't get a 580. Okay?
Sure.
If you get a 580, then a different world. Now, that said, you always want to develop a list of reach, target, and likelies. I don't necessarily believe there's a lot of likelies here anymore in our world, but you certainly want to have some targets as well. And one good target that does a lot of what you want to do is Washington University in St. Louis. Very entrepreneurial town, actually, St. Louis. Super bright people, great university. I think you'd really mesh there. I think, like I said, Haas, all of those are reaches, and I'm not saying it you focused. I think these are reaches for everybody. And certainly in this world, no one knows what the world is going to look like next year. But as usual, I probably talked a little bit long and a little bit too fast. So let me pause and make sure I'm answering your questions.
No, you totally have. I mean, you've addressed the piece of how to kind of bolster the quantitative side of my application really well. I'm also kind of curious. I know this is kind of a sensitive topic, for especially if there are international students who are on the stream right now. I'm pretty committed to next year, fall 21 as a matriculation date, but it was already competitive before COVID hit and before restrictions and travel hit. So I guess my next question is going to be around any advice or suggestions around how to be even more successful in a really extra competitive year, knowing that folks are going to take deferrals, and how do I differentiate myself? How do I, when I can't visit campus, I can't connect in person, that type of thing.
Right. Well, it sounds like you may have even done some of this. It's really important now that you, like you said, you can't go to campus, you can't build any sort of relationship. It's really important now that you track down either current students or recent alumni of each program. And I'm not sure if you did that already, but and in many ways, people find this the most difficult thing to do, to actually essentially send out a blind email to someone, call somebody on the phone. But it's very, very important. It's very, very important because now that really is the only way to get to know schools. And like I say, behind the website. And really being able to say, okay, I spoke to Bob Smith. talk to me about a great class. For example, there are some classes, something like managing the arts. So it wouldn't be great if you're able to say, I spoke to Bob Smith, class of 2018. He got me really excited about this course, Managing the Arts, because one day I hope to combine my passion for music with the world of nonprofits. That you can imagine how that compares to someone who's going to say, on your website, I'm really interested, like at Harvard Business School, I'm really interested in the case method as far as teaching goes. Everyone knows that Harvard teaches in the case method. Who cares? It's like, how are you really going to take advantage in a very personal way? And you only understand that with, honestly, personal conversations. Doesn't even have to be a lot of people, but 2 or 3 people, so that you really are able to say, here's how I'm going to plug in, and plug in not just in the classroom, but outside the classroom as well. And I get, and we are running out of time, but I just want to give you an example. Wharton, which very hard school to get into, at the same point, it does some wonderful things. Wharton every year has the Wharton Follies, which basically is the singing and dancing show that all the students put on. If you were applying to Wharton, one way you could say, I really look forward to participating in the Wharton Follies, where I can use my ability, my great musical abilities to really enhance the show. And on the one hand, it sounds ridiculous. On the other hand, it's really wonderful because you're able to show in that one sentence, I know what Wharton is, I know what it does. Let me tell you a little bit more about myself in terms of being very musical, and then let me show you how I will plug into Wharton. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. No, for sure. And I think I've talked to a few students already, but definitely getting like the specifics nailed down. What is a class that you really are excited about? What is a professor that you really have found a lot of value in getting to know? And just speaking of those specifics would be definitely my next step, I think. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, including things happening outside of the classroom.
That's a good point.
Yeah, business schools are building small communities, and they want to make sure that you know what it is to be a good citizen. And they're really looking for people who will not be in the library, to be honest with you. Sure. So what clubs you're going to be involved with, that sort of thing. Great then. Ty, I'm going to make a commercial here. Ty, all of you, by all means, if you want to continue this conversation more in a personal way with either me or some of my colleagues, sign up for our 30 minutes free. It's not a sales call, but we just give you a better, deeper sense of how your profile compares and things you should work on. Okay, and answer all your questions. Perfect then. Well, Ty, good luck. And why don't we move on to the next person?
Thank you so much.
Of course. I'm going to pronounce your name, though I bet it's not your name, Shem. And I see here you are in India. No, are you in? Let me turn that around and say, Shem, would you just introduce yourself, please?
Yes. Hi, my name is Sahiti.
Okay.
And I currently work in Boston.
Okay.
I work for Harvard Stem Cell Institute in Boston Children's.
All right. Okay. My neighbor. Terrific.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah. Terrific. That's great.
Thank you. And I work in research as a research assistant. And my job is kind of very unique. Where I did my master's in biomedical engineering, and I graduated in 2017 with a 3.78 GPA from University of Bridgeport, and I immediately got this job in Boston Children's, and I've been working here ever since. And my job, we are kind of a service lab, so this is nonprofit, and we work around with all the researchers in the Longwood medical area, and we support their research by helping them with doing some experiments. So it's a kind of like a large scale customer oriented lab, but at the same time we are mostly by ourselves. This is a very small team, and kind of this is what I'm doing right now. But my previous work experience back in India before 2015 was for Amazon. I worked there as I joined for customer service after I graduated.
Sure.
because I just wanted to earn part-time money to support my master's applications and everything. But I really, really liked that job, the scale that I worked there, and then I passed internal exams, and I got promoted to interim team lead within like 8 months in the company. And I was one of the youngest in that batch, and then I actually got permanent by the time I got admissions here, and I chose to come here. But I worked as a NA coach team lead for North America operations. And it was a pretty big team I had there. And well, I came here, I did my master's, and I started working here. And after I started working here, as much as I love science, I'm finding, having coming from that corporate environment, I really felt more fulfilled by that kind of fast-paced work, and I feel like I definitely should do an MBA to kind of get a professional degree to kind of explore that leadership and operation role. And also I'm finding a large gap in that kind of management and even in nonprofit and healthcare industry. And I really want to see if I can bump my career to um, something in leadership and operations to expose uh, well to make myself more strong in terms of that, and then also have a global opportunity. Being from India, uh, anywhere I travel, I want to be able to have that opportunity. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. First of all, great background, great location. I know Longwood Medical Area very well. So I look at you and I think to myself, Venn diagrams, with this idea here of, okay, one world that you've lived in is the world of Amazon, as well as the world of leadership that went along with it. Another world that you lived in is biomedical innovation, I'll say, which very general term here. But in terms of you're getting your biomedical engineering and where you're working now. So you're also in this biomedical world. And on top of that, you're from India. And you have aspirations to go back there, but maybe in a different capacity, maybe working with a U.S. company. So I guess my question is, what jobs exist that will combine your Amazon experience in the world of biomedical engineering that will take you back to India either now or later? And finding that job and finding that trajectory, finding that career path is going to be a great story for you to tell, because that's how everything comes together. And I'm going to sort of make this up in terms of you're going to getting an MBA and then going into the world of Genzyme or one of these big pharma companies, doing maybe a rotational leadership program there. At that point, staying, one foot in the world of, biomedical world, the other foot in sort of big corporation, leadership development, place of a good amount of impact. Is there a career here that says, okay, graduate business school, okay, go into whoever it is, Genzyme, rotational leadership program. At that point, and I think I spoke about this before, learn best practice in the US. At that point, then take it back to India. I think that would be a great way of pulling together really every single piece of your background. And you're going to need and want to talk, really specifically about what Amazon taught you, and as far as what, and your love of the world of biomedicine. So let me pause here. Does that make sense? Is that something that you've thought about?
Yes, absolutely. I'm actually having said that being in Boston I'm already around people who are from Harvard and MIT, and I'm getting a huge exposure about how different fields work. And I am looking into programs that are focusing maybe concentration in healthcare MBA. Where I'm looking into, I don't know, because working in research, I am very poor in quant from the past 4 years, so I really need to work on that with my GMAT. But I'm definitely looking into programs in BU and Northeastern and Harvard and that are focusing on healthcare.
That's perfect.
to kind of combine my both fields.
Okay, listen, I think that's perfect. I forgot on whose slide, but was Vanderbilt as a possibility, and I think Vanderbilt could be a great choice for you. Nashville is a real bio hub. And I think that's Vanderbilt is one of the few schools that is a little bit underrepresented when it comes to international students and is underrepresented when it comes to women. So I think that could be a real good choice for you, as could, and we mentioned earlier, WashU, because St. Louis is also sort of a hub of medicine. And I think those could be good choices for you. Listen, I think you're doing everything right now. The reality is you really have to you really want to create a narrative, a story, a set of essays that just really show off all that you've learned. And great brand name in terms of Amazon goes, great brand name in terms of Harvard and MIT and sort of what you're doing here. I think you almost have to shine a little bit and say, okay, here's where I've been, here's how I want to combine them, and here's what I'll do. And I think that would be very compelling. So I know we're moving along for time here, but any last question?
No, I think you have answered pretty much everything I had in mind. I didn't know how to validate both of them together because they're totally different fields. Yep. And I think that was my biggest question I had so far.
Sure. And Amazon is all about the skills you've built, and sort of the biomedical side is just what your passion is. And if you can take the skills you've built to your passion, then wow, isn't that a great story? Great then. Perfect. And I think, Nicole, do we have one more person or two more people at this point? And I'm hoping just one more person. Nicole, do we have, I don't hear you, do we have one person?
It's just one more person.
Okay, perfect. So our timing will actually work here. Great then. So at this point, it looks like GMatway, and I probably not your real name, but let's move right on to you and give me a general sense of your business school application, how you're thinking about things, how things are going.
Hi, Harold. Thank you for this session, and thank you, GMAT Club, for this session, arranging this session. I would just give a small background about myself. I am an entrepreneur. I am entrepreneur currently, and I have my own firm, which works into curbing textile waste.
Okay, great.
And I was a banker in customer service for last 5 years.
Yep, great.
And last year I started my own company to pursue my passion. And I want to do something in reducing carbon footprint or you can say eco-conscious lifestyle. Yep. So my problem is that I'm not sure about, like, generally we have 3-4 segments in MBA, like marketing, finance, or entrepreneur, but I'm not sure where do I fit in currently, because right now I want to gain some experience in this eco-conscious lifestyle. Yep. And then later on I want to do something on a bigger scale in the same field.
Right. No, that certainly makes sense. So I'm going to address a number of your questions. First off, a red flag goes up for business schools when they see someone who is an entrepreneur who says they want to go to business school. Because at the end of the day, if you are already an entrepreneur, if you are doing something, two questions come up. First of all, what's going to happen to your company? And it is perfectly fine if you say, I tried this and it failed. That's perfectly fine. You just have to be upfront about that. But if you have tried it and it has succeeded, then one of the questions business schools will have, okay, why are you leaving the company? And at that point, two things have had to really have happened. One, you would have had to get to the company of the point of plateau, whatever that really means. Meaning, it's a good step for you to. It's a good time for you to walk away. Maybe your partner has taken it over, or maybe, like I said, it's failed, or you've sold it. But you really have to explain why now is the right time. And also, you have to say, based on what you want to do in the future, why does business school make sense? Because if you want to be an entrepreneur, business school, at least business school itself, will think, well, you don't need to come to business school to be an entrepreneur because you've been an entrepreneur. So I think for you, the important questions you really have to answer is why, and really why at this time, why at this point. So I think that that's really going to be important. As far as, let me pause here. Do you understand that?
Yes, yes, I do, and that's what I'm wondering because as I said, I want to work in eco-conscious
Yep.
lifestyle, and but I don't know how to. Like, there is no particular field that you get in
Right.
thereby. Okay, I want to explore my ideas and all that. So you got my point right.
Yes, 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 I did absolutely. And when you approach business schools, when you decide to apply, a number of them, many of them, have really strong sustainability tracks, majors, pieces to them. So that's something you want to spend a lot of time talking about. And as far as what that ultimate aspiration is, it probably is enough to say you want to be a starter, you want to do an entrepreneur in the world of green, because green is being defined many different ways, many different places. And being an entrepreneur, having already done it, business schools will give you a little bit of pass in the sense of, okay, entrepreneur in the world of sustainability. Okay, we've seen that before. But then the question is, what do you really want to learn at each business school? And that really requires you to talk about, again, if you apply to Wharton, which is a very strong entrepreneurship world, they do have a sustainability major. They have an entrepreneurship major. So in the case of Wharton, you may say something like, okay, you want to focus on sustainability, you want to take courses X, Y, or Z, you want to join the Sustainable Business Club, and you want to take a semester in San Francisco. Wharton does Wharton in San Francisco for a semester to really learn what the best practices are in the world of startups. So I think that would be a really very good story for a place like Wharton. And every school, MIT has they have a sustainability certificate, and a number of other schools do as well. So one thing you can say is, and I'm going to make this up, is you've been doing this startup company. It has not gone well, or it has gone well, but your partner is taking it over, or it failed, and you want to go to business school to understand why it failed. While at business school, you want to learn these specific entrepreneurial skills. One piece of it is certainly going to be leadership. One piece of it is going to be human resource management. So you want to really talk about the entrepreneurship curriculum there and what you need to learn. And then you also want to say, and I have a passion, and in your essays you describe the origin of that passion for sustainability. So then I want to major in sustainability, be in the sustainability track, do whatever sort of internships they have, certainly participate in the sustainability club. And you want to keep on layering on and keep on connecting entrepreneurship based on what you've done and what you still need to learn. It's going to be important what you still need to learn. And sustainability, where that's coming from. Maybe it's coming from something very personal. Let business schools know. And then also make sure that you're very specific about what sustainability means at that particular school. At Yale, it means one thing. At MIT, it means something else. And at Wharton, it means something else. And in some ways, shape-shifting yourself to talk about the sustainability that you want to learn, or the aspects of sustainability you want to learn, are exactly what that particular business school is teaching you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And I also wanted to know that as I was in customer service front desk role, so that involves mostly managing my own work.
Yep.
So how to show my leadership abilities in my previous work, because right now it is a different scenario. I'm handling everything,
Yep.
but in that work, so I want to connect that too as well.
Yep.
I want to know which schools will be good for me.
Sure. Well, with regard to highlighting some of the things you've done in your previous work, that's very much going to come out of the recommenders. I think, like you said, an entrepreneur, maybe just doing it yourself with a couple of other people, obviously you can't write a recommendation about yourself. So you really have to go back further in your career and really get some good recommenders who say you're super smart, as well as you're a wonderful team member and you're a wonderful leader. Some maybe only an informal leader. So that's where you could start as far as that goes. And I think you had a second question. Was it school choice?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. School choice here is see which schools have the most green MBA. There's actually a list of them in terms of, okay, here's the schools that really take sustainability seriously and are studying it. So one great school would be Ross, University of Michigan. Another great school in the Boston area would be Babson. Again, not necessarily a name everyone knows, but a great school. Clearly, MIT is doing a lot. And let me think here, who else is doing a lot? Probably some of the West Coast school. Haas certainly is doing it. UCLA is certainly doing it. And again, just to throw in the names of other schools people should be considering as target schools, unlike reach schools, is University of Washington Foster, which is in Seattle, also doing a lot of it. And getting to know the schools from that perspective, and again, overlaying entrepreneurship and sustainability and seeing what pops out, I think that would be the way that you went along identifying the schools that are right for you. Okay, great then.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yes, sounds good.
Great then. Well, terrific then. Wrapping up, I feel, let me take a minute in terms of if you want to put in the chat box, are there any questions that you're dying to have me answer? Okay, so a good question about an older candidate, 35 years old. For older candidates generally, and I myself was an older candidate, I was 31 when I applied, it's going to be really important that you are clear what you've done and why you can only go to business school now. Why haven't you been able to go earlier? And there could be a lot of different reasons for it. You had family responsibilities, you were in a great job that has ended, whatever it is, you just have to be very specific about why you're 35 and going to business school now rather than 10 years earlier, as well as, again, how will your career be different because you get an MBA? Why can't you just continue doing what you've been doing and when you don't need an MBA? So that's how I would approach that. Perfect. What do you suggest from people who come from a not so known country and study there in a really good university, high level, but not recognized in the worldwide range? Estrella, this is from Estrella. Estrella, what I would say to you is admissions committee members know every single school in the world. So don't ever think that they're not going to know your school, because they will. Certainly an optional essay, you could say, I went to this school for the following reasons, but in many ways, I'm not even sure that you need to do that. Business school, admissions committee members know practically any school out there, okay? That would not be, I think, an issue that's worth worrying much about. Perfect, then, great. Well, that's all the questions I see now. So on behalf of MBA Mission, on behalf of myself, on behalf of GMAT Club, I hope I answered some of your questions. A commercial again, sign up for our free 30-minute consultation with MBA Mission. It is not a sales call, but in any case, if we can be helpful in any way at any point, please let us know. And thanks again to GMAT Club. Okay, Nicole, I think we're over and out.